Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to talking about what life was in ancient Israel. So aside from slaying Goliath, crossing the River Jordan, and fighting the Philistines, the Israelites actually had day-to-day life. They ate breakfast like we did. They had their own architecture like we did. They owned their own tastes in food and everything else like we did. They had daily life. This is something I find actually fascinating because it reminds us that the God of the Bible, who works these miracles, is not just working in a fantasy land that has no bearing on our own existence. God works in our reality. The God is part of the historic lore of our universe. So let's take a look at this article and what it has to say about daily life in ancient Israel. What was life like for the tribes of Israel at the time of the biblical judges? The period archaeologists call the Iron Age 1200 to 1000 BCE. So that would be the evidence for the early Israelite settlers of Canaan comes from two sources: archaeological survey and excavations. Much of the area of the Central Highlands, where most of the settlers of Canaan established their villages, was archaeologically surveyed in the 1890s and 1990s. Much of the Central Highlands. That's a lot of areas where the Israelites came in and conquered. The survey provides much useful information about daily life in ancient Israel during the period of the biblical judges, including the arrangement and size of tribal villages, and even the nature of early Israelite and economics political systems. Excavation data, both from recent excavations at Shiloh, for example. So, Shiloh, where Samuel was the prophet of God, was called by God. They know where that is, and they've been digging at it. They think they've even found a site that might be the Tabernacle of Moses. That may have been where the Tabernacle was. Should probably do a video on that sometime. And from digs long past, such as at Bethel, also provide evidence of a daily life in ancient Israel, including society's wealth, warfare, and housing. From this evidence, the following portrait emerges of daily life in ancient Israel during the time of the biblical judges. So, a lot from excavation. So, what was it like? The Israeli villages built by the settlers of Canaan were on hilltops. They were quite small, possibly 400 people, the largest of these, such as Shiloh or Gibeon. So, very, 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 very small towns. For instance, these towns were mostly unwalled, but they're part of larger political units or regional chiefdoms that provided security. So, take Samson. He would have been part of a very small family group, about 400 people. Very tight-knit. The Israelite villages were given a region within a given region, were subjects of the major town of the area, some of which, like Shechem, were very large and controlled considerable territory. Like, I remember hearing one person talk. I remember hearing Israel Finkelstein. He's an atheist, but he is not an idiot. Talk about the political structure of Canaan, the time period, and Jerusalem controlled a lot of land in the south, and Shechem controlled a lot of land in the north. Is what we know about the time of the Canaanites. Israelites lived in nuclear households during the time of the biblical judges. So they did have a nuclear family, often with their relatives in clusters of houses around a common courtyard. So there was an extended family thing, but there was also a very localized household and family. So when we think about certain abuses that were going on in among certain cities, it would have been this family there, that family there. It would have been an entire clan, as it were. Houses were made of mud brick with a stone foundation, perhaps a second story of wood. Obviously, those would have been destroyed long ago. The living space of the houses consisted of 3 or 4 rooms, very small houses, often with sleeping space on the roof or in a covered roof loft. So, I live in Canada, but even where I live in the summer, it is quite warm outside. When it's warm enough, you can still see outside if you wish to. One one of the first floor rooms was probably a courtyard for domestic animals, mostly sheep and goats. So it had a big central courtyard for the whole clan, and a smaller courtyard for like the private nuclear household. At that time of the biblical judges, the hilltops were densely overgrown, covered with thick scrub of pine, oak, and terebinth trees. So it was a very woody area. It was often too rocky for the sheep, so raising animals never stood at the forefront of the economy. Instead, the early Israelite settlers of Canaan would burn off some of the brush, terrace the hillsides within an hour's walk of the village, plant grain, primarily wheat. So they burned down the trees and that's how they clear land to plant fields and crops and stuff like that. Other lesser crops included lentils, which I actually love, believe it or not, garbanzo beans, barley, and millet. All had a healthy diet of grain. They had orchards on these terraces as well, so lots of terraces. So that is essentially what we know about daily life. It was like a small, closely knit family units, very small, closely knit family units, and a very small town. So if you live in a small town, you're kind of where God started the work of redemption. And that's how it expanded. Yeah, anyway, God bless. Have a great day. If you ever get a chance to check on SSPX Church, I hope you do so. God bless.